You loved what I did for you. Not me. There is a difference. His face collapsed. His hands reached for hers and she watched them tremble, these hands that signed $100 million deals without flinching, shaking now like a man who had just realized the most valuable thing he ever owned was walking out the door. Please. His voice cracked in a way she had never heard in 7 years of marriage. Tell me what to do. Tell me how to make this right. And she looked at him, this man she had loved enough to erase herself, and said the words that would change everything. You cannot fix this, Marcus, because the woman you want back is the woman who disappeared so you could shine, and she is gone. Now before I tell you how they got here, I need to ask you something. Have you ever loved someone so deeply that you forgot to love yourself? Have you ever been so busy building someone else's dream that you woke up one morning and realized your own dreams had turned to dust? Have you ever been so quiet for so long that when you finally opened your mouth, even you were surprised by the sound of your own voice? If you have, this story is going to hit different. And if you have not, this story might save you from ever making that mistake. Hit the like button right now because what this woman did, the choice she made, the moment she stopped disappearing, it will change how you see yourself forever. Trust me, you are going to want to stay for this one. Let me take you back to the beginning. Leora Adeyemi was not born to be invisible. She was born to build things. At 24 years old, she graduated at the top of her architecture class with a thesis on adaptive urban housing that was published in 3 academic journals before she had even walked across the stage. She was recruited by one of the most prestigious firms in the country before her 27th birthday. Her professors said she had the kind of spatial intelligence that comes along once in a generation. Her mind thought in load-bearing walls and sight lines and the poetry of negative space. She did not just design buildings, she designed the way people felt inside them. That was who Leora was. An architect, a creator, a woman whose hands were meant to shape the physical world. And then she met Marcus Vaughan. Marcus was the kind of man who entered a room and rearranged its gravity. Billionaire real estate developer, founder and CEO of Vaughan Meridian, a company that had reshaped the skylines of 4 major cities. He was magnetic, ambitious, relentless. When he spoke, people leaned forward. When he made promises, people believed them. When he looked at Leora across a crowded industry event and said, "You are the most interesting person in this room," she believed him too. Their courtship was a whirlwind. Marcus pursued her with the same intensity he brought to acquisitions. Dinners at restaurants where the menu had no prices. Weekend flights to cities she had only seen in photographs. Conversations that lasted until 3 in the morning about architecture and ambition and the kind of life they could build together. He told her she was brilliant. He told her she was the only person who truly understood his vision. He told her that together they could change the world. And Leora, who had spent her whole life being recognized for her mind, fell in love with a man who seemed to see all of her. They married 18 months later in a ceremony that made the society pages. Leora designed the venue herself, transforming an industrial warehouse into something breathtaking. Exposed steel and cascading flowers and walls of glass that caught the sunset and held it like a promise. Every guest said it was the most beautiful wedding they had ever attended. No one mentioned that the bride had designed it. They only mentioned the groom. That should have been the first sign. The erosion happened slowly. So slowly that Leora did not recognize it as erosion. She thought it was love. She thought it was partnership. She thought it was what you did when you were married to a man whose career demanded so much energy and attention and time. Marcus needed someone to manage his social calendar. Leora did it. Marcus needed someone to coordinate with his assistant on travel logistics. Leora handled it. Marcus needed someone to review his keynote speeches, to reshape his talking points, to make his ideas sound more compelling and human. Leora rewrote them, draft after draft, until his words sounded like poetry. Her research, her insights, his name on the podium. She told herself this was temporary. She told herself her career would still be there when things settled down. But things never settled. Marcus's world only grew larger, and Leora's world shrank to fit inside it. She stopped taking client calls. She let her professional memberships lapse. She turned down a visiting lectureship at the university because Marcus had a conference that week and needed her there. She declined a curatorial collaboration because it required travel and Marcus preferred her available. Available. That word. She did not realize until much later how much of her life had been organized around that single concept. Being available. Being ready. Being present for someone else's needs at the permanent expense of her own. And Marcus, to his credit, never demanded this. He never said quit your career. He never said, "I need you to stop being an architect." He simply expanded into every room she vacated, the way water fills whatever space it is given. He did not push her out. She stepped back, and he never once asked her to step forward again. Their penthouse occupied the 42nd floor of the Ashworth Tower, a building Marcus's company had developed, and Leora had helped design before she stopped being an architect and started being his wife. She had chosen every piece of furniture. She had curated the art on the walls. She had organized the kitchen with the kind of devotion usually reserved for sacred spaces. Every detail in that home bore her fingerprints, her aesthetic, her quiet labor. But it did not feel like hers anymore. It felt like a museum she maintained for someone else's life. For 7 years, Leora Vaughn made herself the foundation her husband's empire stood on. She never imagined that one night, one word, one careless syllable would crack that foundation wide open. The Kensington Heritage Hall was the kind of venue that made people speak in softer voices. High ceilings with ornamental molding, chandeliers that caught the light and scattered it like stars, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Leora had selected it specifically for the annual Foundation Gala, one of the largest fundraising events of the year, because she understood that architecture shapes emotion and she wanted the donors to feel something the moment they walked through the doors. She arrived early that evening to oversee final preparations, table arrangements, audio equipment, catering logistics. She moved through the space with quiet authority, solving problems before anyone else noticed they existed. She wore an emerald gown that she had selected with care, diamond earrings Marcus had given her for their 5th anniversary, hairpin with the kind of effortless precision that required 40 minutes and 12 pins. She looked beautiful. She looked like a woman in complete control of her world. Marcus arrived separately. He had been at the office all day. When he found her near the registration table, he stopped short and looked at her with an expression she could not quite read. "You look stunning," he said. "Thank you." He kissed her cheek, adjusted his cufflinks, and moved into the crowd. Within minutes he was surrounded by donors and board members, shaking hands, making people laugh, commanding the room the way he always did. Leora watched him from across the hall and felt the familiar mixture of pride and loneliness that had become the background music of her marriage. The evening progressed smoothly. Dinner service, speeches, awards. Leora sat at the head table and smiled at appropriate moments and made conversation with the governor's wife about public arts funding. She was good at this. She had spent 7 years becoming good at this, the art of being present without being visible, of contributing without being credited, of making everything run seamlessly while appearing to do nothing at all. Then Marcus stood to give the closing toast. He held his champagne glass high. The room quieted. 300 faces turned toward him. The chandeliers cast warm light across his features. He looked handsome and confident, and every inch the billionaire philanthropist the world believed him to be. "To an incredible evening," he began. "To the generosity in this room, to the work we are doing together, and most importantly," he paused, smiled, "to Celeste." The correction came immediately, a stumble so quick that most people in the ballroom might have missed it entirely. "To this incredible evening, and to my beautiful wife Leora, who makes everything in my life possible." He smiled. He recovered. He clinked glasses with the people nearest to him, and the room erupted in polite applause, and the moment passed as if it had never happened. But Leora heard it. She heard it the way you hear a bone crack beneath your skin. Not a sound the world registers, but one your body will never forget. Celeste, not a phonetic slip, not a syllable that could be confused with Leora. A completely different name stored somewhere deep in her husband's subconscious, surfacing involuntarily when champagne dissolved the architecture of his deception. Leora held her champagne flute with a steady hand. She smiled at the woman beside her who was saying something about the dessert course. She nodded at the appropriate intervals. She excused herself gracefully when the moment allowed and walked across the marble floor with a posture so composed that no one watching could have guessed that her entire internal architecture had just collapsed. In the powder room, she stood before the mirror and looked at the woman staring back at her. The emerald gown, the diamond earrings, the careful hair. She looked like a woman whose husband had not just whispered another woman's name into a microphone in front of 300 people. The tears did not come. They felt trapped somewhere behind her sternum, locked in a place she could not access yet. Instead, she felt a strange numbness spreading. Through her limbs, a protective dissociation that felt like watching herself from across the room. "This is happening to you," her mind whispered. "This is real." She pressed her palms flat against the marble counter and breathed. 1 breath. 2. 3. Then she straightened her shoulders, touched up her lipstick, and walked back into the ballroom. She stood beside Marcus for the rest of the evening. She smiled. She made conversation. She said goodnight to departing guests with warmth and grace. And when they finally got into the car to go home, Marcus humming contentedly in the driver's seat, she sat in the passenger seat in complete silence and stared out the window at a city she no longer recognized. Marcus did not notice her silence. He talked about the donation totals, about a conversation he had with a potential board member, about how well the evening had gone. He talked, and Leora realized with devastating clarity that her silence had become so normal to him that he could no longer distinguish it from peace. That night she lay in bed beside him, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. He fell asleep within minutes, breathing deeply, undisturbed. She lay awake for hours, turning a single word over and over in her mind. Celeste. She did not know anyone by that name, but she would find out. She would find everything out. Not tonight. Tonight, she would lie here in the dark and absorb this information the way she had absorbed everything else in her marriage. Silently, carefully, without burdening anyone else with the weight of it. But this time the silence was not surrender. This time it was strategy. The first 48 hours were the worst, not because of the pain. The pain had not arrived yet. What came first was the disorientation, a seasick feeling that made the world tilt at angles she could not correct. Leora moved through the penthouse, and everything looked foreign. The furniture she had selected, the art she had curated, the kitchen she had organized with such care. All of it was the same. All of it was different. Marcus was attentive in a way that felt like damage control. He brought her coffee without being asked. He complimented her outfit when she had not changed out of her robe. He lingered in doorways watching her with an expression caught between guilt and calculation. "You have been quiet," he said on Sunday morning, standing at the kitchen island with his phone face down on the counter. A habit she noticed was new. "Tired," Leora said. "Long weekend. You sure? You seem off." "I am fine, Marcus." He studied her face the way he studied acquisition reports, looking for risk, for exposure, for something that needed managing. Finding nothing on her surface, he seemed to relax. "Okay," he said. "I have calls this afternoon. Want to do dinner tonight? That place on the waterfront you like?" "Sure." He kissed her forehead and disappeared into his home office. Leora sat at the counter and typed a single word into her phone. "Celeste. Now I need you to stay with me here, because what Leora discovers next, the pattern she uncovers, the truth she pieces together one detail at a time, it is going to change everything. If you are invested in this story right now, if you are already feeling something shifting in your chest, drop a comment and tell me. Have you ever discovered something about someone you trusted that changed everything? And make sure you are subscribed, because what Leora does with this information, the choice she makes, nobody saw it coming. Not Marcus. Not Celeste. Not a single person in their world. Let me continue. It took her 3 days to find the name. She did not search Marcus's phone. She refused to become the kind of woman who scrolled through messages while her husband slept. Instead, she found the answer the way she found everything. Through structure, through systems, through the invisible networks she had spent years building and maintaining. Marcus's company Vaughn Meridian hosted quarterly creative reviews. Leora had attended dozens of them over the years, smiling from the back of the room while Marcus presented strategies that often incorporated her ideas without credit. She pulled up the company website and scrolled through the leadership page. And there she was, Celeste Moreau, Vice President of Brand Architecture, hired 14 months ago. The photograph showed a woman with sharp cheekbones and dark hair pulled into a low knot, black blazer, confident posture, a career trajectory that was aggressive and impressive, awards in visual design, degrees from prestigious institutions, a woman who looked like she had never once questioned her right to be in any room she entered. Leora enlarged the photograph and studied it with the clinical detachment of someone examining blueprints. 14 months. Celeste had been at Vaughn Meridian for 14 months. And as Leora traced those 14 months backward through her memory, the timeline assembled itself with devastating clarity. Marcus's late nights had increased. His phone had migrated from the kitchen counter to his pocket. He had started attending industry events alone, citing Leora's busy schedule. A schedule he had never bothered to learn. And then the memory surfaced. A holiday party last December. Marcus introducing her to a woman in a dark blazer who shook her hand with a firm grip and smiled with bright, knowing eyes. "It is wonderful to finally meet you," the woman had said. "Marcus talks about you all the time." Celeste Moreau had looked her in the eye and smiled, and Leora had smiled back. And the betrayal had been happening right there, in that handshake. In that bright lie exchanged between two women over canapes, while the man who connected them watched from across the room. Leora closed the laptop, and sat very still for a long time. Over the next 2 weeks, she collected evidence the way an architect collects measurements. Precisely, methodically, without emotion. A restaurant charge on their shared account from 3 weeks ago. Dinner for two at a place called Mercer's, $263. Wine and dessert. On a Tuesday night when Marcus told her he was in back-to-back board meetings. The faint trace of perfume on the collar of his navy blazer. A scent she did not own. Something expensive and deliberate. The way his phone now lived in his pocket instead of on the counter. The way he angled the screen away from her when he texted. The way he had started showering immediately when he came home from late meetings, something he had never done before. She documented everything. Dates, times, receipts, observations. She was not building a case for court. She was building a case for herself. Because some part of her, the part that had spent 7 years doubting her own perceptions, needed proof that she was not imagining this. That her instincts were not paranoia. That the ground beneath her feet was actually cracking, and she was not crazy for feeling it shift. She was not crazy. The evidence was real. The pattern was documented, and the woman her husband was seeing was someone who had shaken her hand and smiled at a Christmas party and said, "Marcus talks about you all the time." The withdrawal started so quietly that Marcus did not notice for almost a week. Leora simply stopped doing the things she had always done without being asked. She stopped checking his calendar. She stopped reminding him of commitments. She stopped picking up his dry cleaning. She stopped drafting his talking points for investor presentations. She stopped initiating conversations about his day or asking how his meetings went. These were small abdications, tiny refusals to perform the invisible labor that had kept their entire life running smoothly. And at first Marcus barely registered the change. He was distracted, often on his phone, frequently working late or attending evening meetings that Leora no longer asked about, but gradually things started falling through the cracks. He missed a flight to a conference because Leora did not confirm his car service. He arrived at a client dinner without the gift she would have normally arranged. He stood at the closet one morning, looking lost because Leora had not laid out his clothes for his early meeting. "Did you know about the Hargrove presentation?" he asked one evening. Frustrated, rushing. "I completely forgot about the prep materials." "That is your presentation, Marcus. You usually handle the briefing documents for me." "I have been busy." "Busy with what?" The question landed between them with a weight he did not intend. Busy with what? As though her time had no purpose unless it served him. As though the only meaningful labor in their marriage was the labor that made his life easier. "Work," Leora said simply. "What work?" "Mine." She watched him struggle over the following days. He double-booked himself for 2 events on the same evening. He showed up to a charity dinner, underdressed, because no one had mentioned the dress code. He forgot his mother's birthday because Leora had always been the one who remembered and ordered the flowers and signed both their names on the card. And Leora observed all of this with a feeling she had not expected. Not satisfaction, not vindication, something quieter and more profound. She was discovering that her labor had value, that her attention was currency, that when she withdrew it, people noticed, that the entire infrastructure of Marcus Vaughn's carefully curated life had been built on her invisible hands. She had been the foundation, and she had been taken for granted the way foundations always are. No one thinks about the concrete beneath their feet until it cracks. While Marcus fumbled through his suddenly unmanaged life, Leora made a phone call that changed everything. Adrienne Nakamura had been her closest friend in graduate school. They had stayed up together through countless late nights building models and arguing about structural theory and dreaming about the buildings they would create. Adrienne now ran a small but acclaimed architecture firm in the Arts District. She had offered Leora a position 3 times over the years. Leora had declined every time because Marcus needed her available. "Adrienne," Leora said, "does that offer still stand?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, then a laugh that sounded like relief. "I have been holding a desk for you for 7 years. Say the word." Leora said the word. She started working 3 mornings a week at Adrienne's studio. A sunlit space filled with models and blueprints and the particular energy of people who build things. The work was demanding and exhilarating. Leora's skills returned faster than she expected. Like muscles remembering movements the mind had forgotten. Her hands knew what to do, even when her confidence hesitated. Adrian assigned her to a project that made Leora's heart race for the first time in years. A community arts center on the east side. Adaptive design, mixed-use space, public access. The kind of project Leora had dreamed about before she stopped dreaming. She poured herself into it. She sketched late into the evening. She calculated load capacities and natural light angles and the way sound would move through open galleries. She designed something beautiful and functional and deeply human. And for the first time in 7 years, she felt like herself. She did not tell Marcus, not deliberately, not a strategy, but because she realized with a clarity that stung that he had not asked. He had not noticed her absences because he had never tracked her presence. The confrontation happened on a Wednesday evening 6 weeks after the gala. Leora came home from the studio to find Marcus in the living room with a glass of whiskey and a face she could not read. The late afternoon light slanted through the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning everything golden. Adrian Nakamura called the apartment today, he said. She wanted to confirm your schedule for next week. Leora set down her bag. Okay, you are working at an architecture firm. I am. Since when? 3 weeks ago. You did not tell me. You did not ask. That is not fair, Leora. You made a major life decision without even mentioning it, and something inside her, something that had been building pressure for 6 weeks, for 7 years, for her entire adult life, finally broke through the surface, like you made a major decision without mentioning it to me. The room went silent. Marcus's glass paused halfway to his lips. What decision? Celeste Moreau. His face changed. Not dramatic collapse, not theatrical shock. Something shuddered behind his eyes like security gates descending over a storefront. A closing down, a fortification. I do not know what you are talking about. You said her name at the gala, Marcus. In your toast. In front of 300 people. To Celeste. You raised a glass to a woman who was not me, and then corrected yourself so smoothly that everyone else forgot. But I did not forget. That was a mistake. I'd been in meetings with her all week about the rebrand. Her name was stuck in my head. For 14 months. Her name has been stuck in your head for 14 months. Because that is how long she has been at your company, and that is how long you have been different. The late nights. The phone guarding. The sudden disinterest in being home. You are imagining things. Am I imagining the restaurant charge on our shared account? Dinner for 2 at Mercer's on a Tuesday night when you told me you were in board meetings? Am I imagining the perfume on your blazer that I do not own? Am I imagining that you introduced me to her at your holiday party and she smiled at me like she knew something I did not? Marcus stood. His jaw tightened. You have been investigating me. I have been paying attention. There is a difference. Though I understand why you would confuse the two. You have been so comfortable with my blindness that awareness looks like surveillance. The silence that followed was enormous. It pressed against the windows and filled every corner of the apartment she had designed and he had claimed. It did not mean anything, Marcus said finally. His voice had gone hollow. It was a mistake. A stupid, selfish mistake. Mistakes are accidental, Marcus. What you did was deliberate. You chose her repeatedly. You chose deception repeatedly. You built a parallel life and hid it behind my trust. I will end it. It is already ending. I swear to you, Leora, I am not finished. He closed his mouth. I have spent 7 years building your world. I abandoned my career. I managed your household, your social obligations, your emotional life. I drafted your speeches, organized your schedule, made myself so seamlessly useful that you stopped seeing me as a person and started treating me as infrastructure. And in return, you gave my place to someone who did not earn it, someone who never sat through your mother's criticisms, never stayed up until 2 a.m. editing your keynotes, never put her dreams in storage so yours could take up every room in this apartment. Marcus's eyes glistened. I love you. You loved what I did for you. There is a difference. No. He crossed the room. I love you. I made a terrible mistake, and I will spend the rest of my life making it right if you let me. When was the last time you asked about my research, Marcus? My work? My interior life? When was the last time you were curious about what I think or feel about anything that does not directly affect you? He stared at her, unable to answer. You cannot remember. Because you stopped seeing me years ago, I became furniture in your life. Valuable furniture, maybe. Well-chosen and functional. But inanimate. I never meant to make you feel that way. I know you did not mean to. That is the problem. You did not think about it at all. My invisibility was so convenient for you that you never questioned it. His hands reached for hers and she watched them tremble. Please, tell me what to do. Tell me how to make this right. I have contacted an attorney, not to file. Not yet, but to understand my options. I need space, Marcus. Not a day or a weekend. Real space. Weeks, maybe months. His face collapsed. This is not a negotiation. This is me telling you what I need for the first time in 7 years. And I need you to hear it without trying to manage it. And for the first time in their marriage, he listened. He actually listened. I need you to pause with me for a second. Because what just happened is not just a scene in a story. It is the moment a woman stopped apologizing for her own existence. And if that hit you, if something inside you just said that is me, I want you to share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with the person who has been making themselves small. Share it with the friend who forgot they have a voice. Sometimes the story that changes your life is not your own. It is someone else's that finally gives you permission to speak. 4 months passed. Marcus moved into a service department downtown. Leora stayed in the penthouse. She redecorated her study, bought furniture she loved without consulting anyone, created an environment that reflected her taste rather than compromise. The Community Arts Center project moved from blueprints to construction. Leora stood in the warehouse space watching her design become reality. Exposed beams, soaring ceilings, walls of glass flooding the interior with natural light. Her name on the blueprints, her vision shaping physical space. Adrian stood beside her one afternoon grinning. The planning commission approved the final phase. Full funding. The mayor's office wants to feature it in their urban renewal campaign. Leora touched the concrete wall, feeling its roughness beneath her fingers. I forgot what this felt like. Making something real. You did not forget. You just stopped giving yourself permission. She accepted a teaching position at the university. A graduate seminar on adaptive design. Students who looked at her with hungry admiration. She mentored them fiercely. She refused to let any of them shrink. Marcus texted her daily. Not apologies anymore, but small observations. Saw a building today that reminded me of your thesis project. The one with the floating courtyard. It was never built, was it? It should have been. She did not always respond. But she read every message. And she noticed slowly, reluctantly, that something in his language was changing. He was asking questions about her work, referencing her ideas not as extensions of his own, but as things with their own weight and worth. He had started therapy. He mentioned it once without fanfare during a brief phone call. I am trying to understand why I needed to be the center of everything. Why I could not tolerate sharing the spotlight with my own wife. It was the first honest thing he had said in years. She saw him unexpectedly at a gallery opening. He looked different, thinner, quieter. He found her near an installation piece made of suspended glass. Adrian told me about the Arts Center, he said. I saw the renderings. It is extraordinary, Leora. Thank you. I am proud of you. I know I do not have the right to say that anymore, but watching you step into your own light has been the only good thing in these terrible months. She looked at him. The anger had faded over these months, replaced by something more complicated. A grief that was also a kind of gratitude. Grief for the years she lost. Gratitude for the fracture that set her free. If there is any chance, she said slowly, it would require you to love a version of me you have never known. The version that has a voice. That sets boundaries. That will not disappear to make you comfortable. I want to love that version of you. I think I would like to meet her. You might not like her. She is inconvenient. She takes up space. Good. His voice was rough. You should take up every room. They stood together in the gallery. Not touching, not reconciled. But something fragile and unnamed hovered between them. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But a door left neither open nor closed. Leora walked home alone that night through streets she had once helped design. The city glittered around her. Buildings and bridges and structures that would outlast every human heartbreak. She had built things before. She would build things again. Now before you go, let me talk to you directly for a moment. Not about Leora or Marcus, but about what we just witnessed and what it means for your life. Because this story is not really about an affair. It is about invisible labor. It is about the work that keeps relationships and households and entire lives running smoothly. Work that is never acknowledged, never credited, and only recognized when it is withdrawn. It is about self-erasure, the slow, quiet process of making yourself smaller so someone else can feel bigger, calling it love when it is really disappearance. calling it partnership when it is really service without recognition. And it is about voice, the difference between silence that is chosen and silence that is survival. When your quietness becomes the reason people overlook you, when your accommodation becomes the permission others use to take you for granted, that is not peace. That is slow disappearance. Some of you watching this right now have been Leora. You have made yourself so easy to love that people forgot you were a person, not a service. You have swallowed your needs so many times that you have forgotten what they taste like. You have built someone else's world so carefully that you forgot to build your own. And I want you to hear this. Your needs are not negotiable. Your feelings are not inconvenient. Your voice is not a privilege someone else grants you. It is your birthright. And the people who truly love you will never require you to silence yourself to earn their affection. So today, I am praying for you. I am praying for the courage to use your voice even when it shakes. I am praying that you surround yourself with people who celebrate your fullness, not your silence. I am praying for clarity, the kind that helps you see the difference between people who value you and people who use you. And I am praying that you choose yourself, again and again until choosing yourself becomes as natural as breathing. If this story changed something in you today, if it reminded you that you deserve to take up space, then welcome to the Heart of Love Stories family. Subscribe and hit that notification bell. Every week we share stories about love and dignity and transformation and the courage it takes to choose yourself when everyone else expects you to disappear. Share this video with someone who needs it. Drop a comment telling me what moment hit you the hardest. And remember, you are not too much. You are not too little. You are exactly enough. And your voice, when you finally choose to use it, has the power to change everything. Until next time, your story matters. Your voice matters. And we are here to remind you of that one story at a time.